The Diary of a Wimpy Kid series was undoubtedly one of the funniest books of our childhood. Today, we're diving into Greg's hilarious misadventures, from his struggles with family life to the challenges of navigating the social chaos of school. In this video, I will recap all 19 books and you will understand the story of the Wimpy Kid. In the first book, Greg Heffley starts middle school with his best friend Rowley Jefferson and insists that he's writing a journal, not a diary, to avoid being teased. He plans to use it to share his experiences with reporters when he becomes famous. Greg navigates the challenges of middle school, such as sitting near classmates he doesn't like, the popularity hierarchy, and the return of the cheese touch legend. Greg and Rowley often face social rejection due to Rowley's childish behavior. Greg's schemes to get out of exercising or to listen to his brother Rodrick's band music usually backfire, earning him punishments. Halloween is another chaotic time, with Greg and Rowley encountering scary haunted houses, aggressive teenagers, and pranks from Greg's dad. As the school year progresses, Greg is forced to wrestle Fregley in gym class, joins the school play reluctantly, and throws an apple at Patty Farrell during the performance, causing chaos. Christmas is disappointing for Greg, who receives unwanted gifts, while his younger brother Manny gets everything he asked for. During winter, Greg invents a big wheel game that results in Rowley breaking his arm, gaining sympathy from girls. Greg joins the safety patrol with Rowley, but ends up losing his position after blaming Rowley for scaring kindergartners, which strains their friendship. When Rowley starts spending time with another friend, Greg tries to make him jealous, but ends up regretting his choices. Near the end of the school year, Greg and Rowley get into a fight, but before it escalates, the same teenagers from Halloween force Rowley to eat the rotten cheese, passing on the cheese touch. Greg lies about throwing the cheese away and avoids being ostracized. Although their friendship is repaired, Greg is bitter when Rowley is named class clown in the yearbook. In the second book, Rodrick Rules, the book follows Greg Heffley as he navigates a new school year, his complicated relationship with his older brother Rodrick, and various middle school misadventures. During the summer, Greg joins a swim team and shares an embarrassing secret with Rodrick, which Rodrick later uses as leverage against him. As school starts, Greg realizes he still has the dreaded cheese touch, but quickly passes it to a new student. His friendship with Rowley Jefferson also hits some bumps, with Rowley returning from a trip to South America and annoying Greg with his behavior. Greg's mom introduces Mom Bucks, a system to encourage bonding between Greg and Rodrick, but both boys exploit it for their gain. Rodrick throws a party while their parents are away, trapping Greg in the basement. Though the boys manage to clean up before their parents return, a photo from the party is discovered and Rodrick is punished. Greg also faces trouble when a prank on his old friend Chirag Gupta leads to Susan forcing him to apologize. As the months progress, Greg tries to navigate friendships, school projects, and his reputation. He attends Rowley's karate-themed birthday party, gets involved in the school's winter talent show, and struggles with his own insecurities. Meanwhile, Rodrick dreams of his band Loaded Diaper getting famous, but it's disappointed when their performance is overshadowed by Susan's dancing, which becomes an internet sensation. In the end, Greg's secret about accidentally walking into a women's restroom during the summer is revealed by Rodrick, but gets twisted into a more flattering story, making Greg popular among his male classmates. Despite their rocky relationship, Greg helps Rodrick with his science project, showing a rare moment of brotherly support. The book concludes with Greg reflecting on his year and his tumultuous but occasionally rewarding bond with Rodrick. In the third book, The Last Straw, the story begins with Greg Heffley reflecting on New Year's resolutions and how his family struggles to stick to them. Greg's year gets off to a rocky start with his dad, Frank, pressuring him to be more active and disciplined, and his mom, Susan, assigning him more responsibilities disguised as gifts, like a laundry hoop. Greg deals with typical middle school challenges, including embarrassing moments in front of Holly Hills, his crush. His attempts to impress her often backfire, such as when his mom calls him sweetie in class, or when he wears oversized backup glasses to a skating rink. Holly mistakenly calls him Fregley, which marks the end of his interest in her. At school, Greg faces issues like walking to school in the cold, a missing dictionary causing recess to be cancelled, and struggles with falling asleep in class. His ventures to make money, such as burying a time capsule or purchasing gadgets from comic book ads, also fail miserably. Greg's dad grows increasingly frustrated with him, especially after seeing his lackluster performance in soccer and other activities. At home, Greg's relationship with his family continues to be chaotic. His brother Rodrick locks him out of a hotel room in his underwear, and his younger brother Manny causes drama by crying over a toy Greg tried to take from him. Even at church, Greg ends up in an embarrassing situation, wearing his mom's sweater as a kilt. The book concludes with Greg's dad deciding against sending him to Spag Union, much to Greg's relief. Greg spends his first day of summer hanging out with Rowley Jefferson. The story ends on a hopeful note when a girl named Trista introduces herself to Greg and Rowley, leaving Greg optimistic about the summer ahead. In the fourth book, Dog Days, the story begins with Greg Heffley describing his ideal summer, which involves staying indoors playing video games. However, his mother, Susan Heffley, wants him to spend time outdoors and join activities, much to Greg's dismay. Greg frequently visits a country club with Rowley Jefferson, but after some complaints and a hefty bill for smoothies, Rowley's father bans Greg from returning. Greg reluctantly spends time at the town pool, which he dislikes, and avoids embarrassment caused by his mom's attempts to involve him in activities. A sleepover with Rowley goes wrong after they watch a horror movie, leaving them terrified. Greg's family adopts a dog named Sweetie, who quickly becomes a source of annoyance for Greg. Sweetie often misbehaves, causing chaos in the house. Meanwhile, Greg's attempts to impress his crush, Heather Hills, fail, and his trip with Rowley to a beach house turns disastrous due to Greg's antics and complaints. Toward the end of the summer, Greg mistakenly believes his father plans to send him away, but discovers Frank is actually rehoming Sweetie. Greg's actions inadvertently ruin Frank's plan to take him to a baseball game. In the fifth book, The Ugly Truth, Greg Heffley is dealing with life after a fallout with his best friend Rowley Jefferson. He searches for a new best friend, but struggles to find someone who fits. Meanwhile, Rowley's parents hire a cool Brian to hang out with him, which Greg finds amusing and ridiculous. At school, Greg deals with the challenges of puberty, including an embarrassing health class video and a take care of an egg assignment, which ends disastrously when his mother accidentally cooks his egg. He also fails an audition for a Peachy Breeze ice cream spokesperson role and feels overshadowed by his younger brother Manny. Meanwhile, Greg faces more embarrassment during his Uncle Gary's fourth wedding, where he's made an assistant flower boy. After the wedding, Greg reflects on the pressures of growing up following the talk from his great-grandmother Gammy. She advises him to enjoy childhood, which inspires Greg to focus less on maturity and more on having fun. He also realizes that missing a popular party wasn't so bad, since younger kids were only invited to serve the older ones. By the end of the book, Greg and Rowley reconcile, with Greg deciding to take the first step in repairing their friendship. In the sixth book, Cabin Fever, as the holidays approach, Greg Heffley is worried about staying on Santa's good side to avoid getting bad presents for Christmas. His mother introduces a toy called Santa's Scout, which Greg finds irritating because it seems to monitor his behavior. He also recalls past Christmas mishaps like losing a doll named Alfredo, which left him traumatized. At school, Greg deals with stricter rules about playground safety and unhealthy food, including the banning of his favorite energy drinks. Greg also attempts to make money by shoveling snow, but fails after creating an ice-covered driveway and spending his earnings on rock salt. Greg and Rowley briefly attempt to host their own holiday bazaar, but give up after their plans fail. They create a neighborhood newspaper, but their advertising posters accidentally stain the school's walls, resulting in an investigation. Rowley confesses their involvement, but only Greg's name is mentioned, leading Greg to scrub the stains as punishment. Shortly after, a massive snowstorm traps Greg's family at home. During the storm, Manny takes control of the household, hacking into Greg's NetCritters account, changing the parental lock on the TV, and hoarding food and electricity in his room. Greg is forced to manage Manny's tantrums while the rest of the family struggles to stay warm. On Christmas morning, Greg is disappointed to find his parents wrapped in trash bags due to the blizzard. He receives a signed copy of his favorite book, but it's personalized to Craig instead of Greg. Despite the holiday chaos, Greg is surprised to find himself praised in the local newspaper for allegedly clearing snow for the church's soup kitchen. Inspired by the recognition, Greg plans to revive the neighborhood tattler, hoping to profit from his newfound fame. In the seventh book, The Third Wheel, Greg Heffley reflects on his early childhood, imagining his pre-birth days as peaceful until disrupted by classical music and his parents' voice played through parental speakers. Once born, he realizes everything he gets is a hand-me-down from his older brother Rodrick. Greg struggles with basic skills in preschool and kindergarten and remains socially behind his peers. Meanwhile, his younger brother Manny is treated differently. Indulged by their parents and influenced by a show called The Snurples that ruins his grammar and social skills. The family starts a family night tradition, often eating at a chaotic restaurant called Corny's. Uncle Gary moves in temporarily, causing disruption with his laziness and odd jobs. Greg's school announces a ballroom dancing unit, but Greg is relieved not to be paired with the notorious Ruby Bird. Meanwhile, the student council elections are held, and Eugene Ellis wins the presidency by promising quilted toilet paper. However, the school can't afford it, sparking student outrage and eventually leading to a toilet paper shortage, strict rules, and even hoarding incidents. To raise money, the school organizes a Valentine's Day dance and sells candygrams. Greg attempts to use them to gain popularity and even sends himself a candygram, but his plans backfire. His attempts to ask girls out fail, including a babysitting fiasco at the Stringer household. Ultimately, Greg teams up with Rowley to take Abigail, a girl left dateless, to the dance. The dance turns chaotic when a senior citizens group takes over half the gym. The event becomes a disaster with loud music, unruly behavior, and Abigail encountering her ex-boyfriend. Greg dances with Abigail but panics upon seeing what he thinks are chicken pox on her face. Later, he realizes it was just a pimple, but the damage is done. Uncle Gary moves out after winning $40,000 on a scratch card, which he wastes on more scratch cards. Greg catches chickenpox but enjoys some peace in the bath, reflecting on his chaotic life and longing for simpler times. In the 8th book, Hard Luck, the book begins with Greg recounting his mom Susan's belief that family is forever, which Greg finds questionable due to his family's chaotic dynamics. He's also upset that his best friend Rowley Jefferson has started dating Abigail, making their friendship distant. Greg feels excluded and annoyed by how Abigail influences Rowley's decisions, leaving Greg to navigate challenges like writing essays in cursive and avoiding dog poop on his own. Greg attempts to befriend Fregley to fill the void left by Rowley, thinking he can mold Fregley into the perfect friend. However, Fregley's bizarre antics, like using his belly button to chew gum, gain him attention but embarrass Greg. Meanwhile, Greg observes the social hierarchy at school, the issues with cafeteria seating, and schemes like the counterfeit hero points system introduced as a way to encourage kindness. During spring break, Susan announces a family gathering, leading to chaos as relatives search for Meemaw's missing diamond ring. Greg struggles to deal with his relatives, including Aunt Gretchen and her unruly kids. When Greg finds a magic 8-ball under Rodrick's bed, he begins relying on it to make decisions, but faces consequences when it's mistaken for a cheating device at school. Greg joins the yearbook club to escape the Mingo kids, but his edited photos and apathy lead him to quitting after taking an awkward picture of Rowley and Abigail, who were voted cutest couple. He later learns Abigail dumped Rowley to get back with her ex Michael. Despite his initial reluctance, Greg feels guilty seeing Rowley alone at the Find a Friend station and decides to reconcile with him. While searching for his magic 8-ball in Grandma's backyard, Greg accidentally finds Meemaw's missing ring. Fearing it might cause more family drama, he hides it and decides to focus on repairing his friendship with Rowley. In the 9th book, The Long Haul, the story begins with Susan announcing a surprise road trip for the family, much to Greg's dismay. She gets the idea from Family Frolic magazine, which always inspires her to try activities that never turn out as planned. The family struggles to pack everything into their car, including Frank's old boat, which has been used as storage for years. Despite Greg suggesting renting an RV, Susan insists on sticking to a traditional road trip. On the first day, the family plays games and eats Mommy's Meals, a healthier alternative to fast food that Greg and Rodrick dislike. Manny falls asleep, forcing the family to drive without stopping to avoid waking him. They finally reach a motel, which turns out to be a dirty and run down. Greg encounters a rude family he nicknames the Beardos after a confrontation in the parking lot. Dinner is a disaster as Rodrick brought snacks instead of real food. The next day, the family visits a county fair where Rodrick wins a foulest shoe contest, leaving him with only one shoe. Manny guesses the exact weight of a hog and wins a live baby pig as a prize. The pig quickly causes chaos, eating snacks, destroying a hotel room, and biting Greg's finger. The family eventually gives the pig to a petting zoo, which upsets Manny. As the road trip continues, the family faces numerous mishaps. Greg's finger needs medical attention, but the nearest option is a veterinarian. Later, at a water park, Greg loses the locker key and suspects the Beardos of stealing their belongings. When they confront the Beardos at their motel, they're caught sneaking into the room, further escalating the tension. The car breaks down after the radiator is damaged, forcing the family to rely on a temporary fix to keep the heater running at full blast. Manny surprises everyone by speaking fluent Spanish to 2 men who help them get home. Along the way, the family retrieves Manny's pig and finally returns home exhausted. In the end, Greg finds the lost locker key in his shorts while doing laundry. He realizes the whole incident was his fault, but struggles to decide whether to confess, frame Rodrick, or dispose of the evidence, leaving the story on a humorous cliffhanger. In the 10th book, Old School, the story follows Greg Heffley and his family through a series of humorous and relatable events. Greg reflects on his parents' nostalgia for the past, particularly his mom's desire for a simpler life without modern technology, which Greg finds hard to imagine. His mom, Susan, starts a petition to turn off the electricity in their neighborhood for 48 hours to encourage people to interact more, but Greg and his brother Rodrick avoid signing it. Greg's summer is contrasted with his dad Frank's memories of playing outside all day, as Greg spends his time at film camp watching movies instead of being outdoors. Greg also deals with his pet pig, which walks on 2 legs due to being fed cookies by his mom. He fears that pigs will eventually rule the world. When Grandpa moves in with the Heffleys due to financial troubles, Greg is forced to share his room with his younger brother Manny, and and deal with Grandpa's eccentric behavior. Meanwhile, Frank becomes increasingly critical of Greg, expecting him to learn life lessons like opening a microwave burrito or tightening bolts, while Greg struggles with the idea of self-reliance. Greg's school year begins with a teacher-parent meeting, leading to Greg being placed in harder classes. He also participates in the Homework Buddies program with a boy named Fru, who does most of the work while Greg takes credit. The story continues with Greg and his friend Rowley running a lemonade stand, but business is slow until they market it as fitness water. However, they face competition from Cedric Cunningham's more successful stand. Later, they help clean the park for a community service event where Greg meets a group of juvenile delinquents, including Billy Rotner, who has a troubled past. Greg's time at Hardscramble Farms, a camp his dad attended as a kid, is filled with mishaps, including getting lost, dealing with poor conditions, and encountering the mythical Silas Scratch. Eventually, Greg uncovers that Silas Scratch is a fabrication created by his dad to hide the camp's poor facilities, and Greg reflects on how he might do the same thing when he becomes a parent. The story ends with Greg's humorous take on continuing the Silas Scratch legend, much like his father did, as he leaves camp with Frank, realizing that the cycle of parenting and mischief may continue. In the 11th book, Double Down, the book begins with Greg Heffley imagining that his life is a reality TV show, similar to The Truman Show. He suspects that his family and friends might be robots or actors, which leads to antics like spraying his dad with a hose to test if he's a robot. This gets Greg grounded. He also feels guilty about misbehaving, believing his late relatives are watching him from heaven. At school, Greg attends a book fair where he spends his money on toys instead of books, frustrating his mom, Susan. She insists he exchange them for books, but Greg chooses the Spine Tickler series, which later gives him nightmares. Susan also recalls past attempts to make Greg excel academically, like hiring a tutor and getting him tested for a gifted program, which he failed. Greg participates in the school's Balloon Brigade contest to win a giant bag of candy corn. His balloon is returned by a kid named Maddox, who Greg invites over for a playdate. Maddox turns out to be overly strict about toys and games, leading to a disastrous visit. Susan disapproves of Greg's behavior, seeing Maddox as a good influence. Susan enrolls in college full-time and introduces a chore bag for Greg and Rodrick. After Greg wins the candy corn, his pet pig eats it, causing chaos and earning Greg more chores. Later, Greg and Rowley decide to make a horror movie called Night of the Nightcrawlers. While filming, they use Frank and Susan's camera and accidentally record over Manny's first steps. Frank punishes Greg for the mess, while Rowley gains fame after being caught on camera running from geese in his underwear. The story highlights Greg's comedic misadventures and his struggles with family, friends, and school. Despite his schemes and mishaps, Greg's antics continue to create chaos in his life. In the 12th book, The Getaway, the story begins with Greg Heffley sharing his dislike for hearing about other people's perfect holidays and recounting his family's chaotic Christmas vacation. Struggling with holiday preparations in cold weather, Greg's parents, Frank and Susan, decide to take the family to Isla de Corrales, a luxurious resort where they had their honeymoon. Greg objects, disliking the idea of flying and having the vacation replace his Christmas present, but his protests are overruled. At the airport, a series of delays and mishaps occur, from misplaced luggage to Greg stepping in a slush puddle. After boarding the plane, Greg experiences discomfort in the economy section, while Frank enjoys first class. A turbulent flight and various inconveniences leave Greg frustrated, but the family finally arrives at the resort on Christmas Day. The suite is now part of the adults-only Wild Side, and they must stay in the family-oriented Mild Side. To make matters worse, their luggage is sent back home, leaving them with limited clothing. The Heffleys attempt to enjoy the resort, but face challenges including Greg finding a tarantula in his slipper, and Manny smuggling a boxed jellyfish that leads to the pool being drained. The family participates in activities like snorkeling, banana boating, and turtle hatching, but these are marred by accidents and awkward moments. Rodrick starts dating a girl he meets in the teen zone, but she later betrays him. Manny's antics, such as peeing on the ground to avoid activities and throwing a TV remote in the pool, add to the chaos. Tensions escalate as Greg is trapped in a chaotic tennis court game and the family is accused of stealing clothes from another family's luggage. They are ejected from the resort and forced to spend the night at an airport hotel. Determined to leave on a high note, they sneak back into the resort but are caught again. Greg winds up on a private nude beach while escaping security, causing further embarrassment. Back home, Greg discovers his family has been permanently banned from Isla del Corrales, solidifying his belief that the trip was a terrible idea. Despite the fiasco, Greg humorously reflects on the experience, highlighting the absurdity and dysfunction of his family's holiday adventure. In the 13th book, The Meltdown, the story begins with Greg Heffley noting the unusually warm January weather and expressing his concerns about global warming, rising sea levels, and even prehistoric creatures potentially re-emerging due to melting ice caps. He tries to convince his parents to move to higher ground, but they dismiss his worries, leaving him increasingly anxious. Greg's history project on Malta becomes a major focus when he procrastinates and submits a poorly prepared presentation. He and Rowley try to find warm places during the cold weather, sneaking into Greg's grandma's house while she's away, but they're caught by Susan, who surprisingly praises their creativity instead of punishing them. As the snow piles up, tensions escalate between kids from Upper and Lower Surrey Street. Greg and Rowley attempt to reclaim their territory by building snow forts, but the conflicts intensify into an all-out snow war involving nearly every kid in the neighborhood. The battle spirals further when the safety patrol seeks revenge for being snowballed, and the notorious Mingo kids arrive, turning the conflict into chaos. In the midst of the snow war, Greg realizes he accidentally brought Meckley Mingo's belt buckle, angering the Mingo clan. The battle reaches its peak, but a snowplow ultimately clears the streets, abruptly ending the chaos. After the war, Greg reflects on the absurdity of the fight and the swift warming of the weather. He observes how some kids, like Trevor Nix, adapt to new social dynamics, while he contemplates humanity's future and the role of resourceful people like himself in ensuring survival. The book ends with Greg embracing his unique perspective, hopeful that his pragmatic mindset might one day save humanity. In the 14th book, Wrecking Ball, the story begins with Greg Heffley participating in spring cleaning, planning to sell his old items at a yard sale. Despite including broken toys, Greg hopes to make some money. However, rain disrupts the sale, and Greg's attempts to earn extra, including a misguided plan involving Rowley and a dog, backfire spectacularly. In April, Greg's great-aunt Reba passes away, and the family inherits some money, sparking debates about how to use it. During a chaotic funeral mix-up, they accidentally attend the wrong service. The inheritance leads to family arguments, and Susan decides to spend the money on a bigger kitchen, ignoring everyone else's ideas. Meanwhile, Greg reflects on childhood fears, like his imaginary demon, the Grout, and helps with household chores. Disaster strikes during a gutter cleaning attempt when Greg gets stuck on the roof, leading to a series of mishaps. The family also hires workers for home renovations, causing tension with neighbors and hilarious incidents, including a fight among the workers. In May, the Heffleys discover their house has mice, further complicating their lives. Rodrick's over-the-top plan to use a snake and mongoose to exterminate them is a source of comedy. The renovation leads to neighborhood complaints, and Susan's attempts to cook bacon result in smoke damage. A garden dispute with their neighbor, Mrs. Tuttle, forces them to remove the new structure, adding to the chaos. By June, the family considers moving to a better house after their current one becomes unlivable. Greg is excited about starting fresh, but Rodrick and Manny resist the idea. The family hosts a moving away party where Greg and Rowley share an emotional farewell. However, disaster strikes when a crane mishandles their hot tub, destroying the house and derailing their moving plans. The prospective, in the end, the Heffleys move into Grandma's basement, setting the stage for the next installment, The Deep End. In the 15th book, The Deep End, the story begins with the Heffley family living in Grandma's basement after their house is destroyed in Wrecking Ball. Sharing one room proves difficult, with Greg stuck sleeping next to Rodrick and everyone following Manny's strict schedule. Greg feels stifled, especially as Susan insists on family bonding through activities like puppet shows and board games. Despite these efforts, Greg longs for privacy and freedom. To escape their cramped situation, the family decides to go on a road trip in Uncle Gary's old camper van. Susan envisions the trip as an adventurous family bonding experience, but Greg worries it will turn into an educational journey. They prepare for the trip by visiting a camping store where they're bombarded with advice about dangers like bears and snakes, which only heightens Greg's unease. The trip begins with minor inconveniences, but quickly escalates into a series of disasters. The family struggles to find suitable camping spots, often being chased away from private property or accidentally stopping in the wrong places. At one point, they unknowingly swim in a fish hatchery, which leads to an angry confrontation with locals. The family eventually arrives at Camper's Eden, a luxury campsite that initially seems promising, but turns out to be poorly managed and overcrowded. Greg's attempts to find enjoyment are thwarted by chaotic conditions, including unruly kids, unsupervised pools, and malfunctioning facilities. He reluctantly befriends a group of boys who involve him in pranks and a water gun fight, which leads to him being falsely blamed for trashing the campsite's snack shack. As tensions rise among the campers due to food and water shortages, a flash flood strikes the area. The Heffleys narrowly escape by using their camper as a makeshift bridge, thanks to Manny's quick thinking. Despite the chaos, the family finds solace in the now empty campsite, enjoying a few peaceful days by themselves. In the 16th book, Big Shot, Greg Heffley starts the story by reflecting on his lack of athletic talent, declaring he's retiring from sports. He recounts his early enthusiasm for soccer in preschool, where rules were loose and everyone scored goals. However, as the games became more competitive, Greg lost interest, preferring to avoid participating. At school, an announcement for field day motivates Greg to get in shape, leading to failed attempts at the gym and healthy eating. During field day, Greg participates in a few events but performs poorly, except when his partner carries him in the three-legged race. Despite the chaos, Vice Principal Roy declares a no school day for everyone, much to Greg's relief. Susan insists Greg join a sports team, recalling her happy experiences in middle school basketball. Greg reluctantly tries out for basketball, hoping to fail, but unexpectedly makes the team after Preet Patel's father, Coach Patel, forms a team for players who didn't make the cut. The team struggles, with practices held in an elementary school cafeteria and players showing little talent, except for Preet. In their first game, the team is humiliated by a stronger opponent. They continue to lose every game, with Patel's motivational speeches doing little to improve their performance. Frustrated, Patel eventually quits, leaving Susan to step in as the team's coach. Susan focuses on team-building exercises rather than basketball skills, but the team still struggles. The team participates in the Second Chance Tournament, a competition for winless teams. They face quirky opponents, including nerds, actors, and aggressive players, but lose every game. In the final game against the Funky Dunkers, Preet returns to play but is unable to secure a decisive victory. To ensure fairness, Susan sends Greg to play for the opposing team. Greg unexpectedly makes a miraculous backward half-court shot, securing a win for the Funky Dunkers and experiencing the thrill of being a hero for the first time. Greg ends the story feeling conflicted about sports, but content with his moment of glory, deciding that sometimes it's best to quit while you're ahead. In the 17th book, Diaper Overlode, Greg Heffley begins by discussing the challenges of fame and concludes it's better to be related to someone famous. He highlights his older brother Rodrick's rock band Loaded Diaper, which dreams of stardom but faces major hurdles like lack of resources, professional opportunities, and reliable bandmates. Despite these issues, Rodrick sets his sights on winning the Battle of the Bands, inspired by his favorite band, Metalla Chihuahua. The band's efforts to prepare include attempting to dress like rock stars, holding photo shoots, and recording videos. Their lack of professionalism leads to comedic mishaps, such as using Halloween costumes and a baby photo studio for their images. To address their transportation issues, they enter a hands-on-a-van contest, but lose due to a misunderstanding. They eventually acquire an old ice cream truck as their band vehicle. Loaded Diaper gains fleeting fame when they post slapstick videos online, but fail to sustain their popularity when they pivot back to music. Attempts to emulate Metalla Chihuahua's success, such as playing in extreme locations, end in failure. The band finally records a song, Diaper Overload, but struggles to promote it effectively. Rodrick's determination leads them to gigs, including playing at a bar mitzvah and a disastrous performance at a club called the Headless Chicken, where the audience pelts them with chicken wings. Seeking guidance, Loaded Diaper meets former Metalla Chihuahua members. While they provide advice, they also reveal how greed and ego cause their own band's downfall. Despite the setbacks, Rodrick motivates Loaded Diaper to persist, and they secure gigs that help rebuild their confidence. As the Battle of the Bands approaches, tension rises when a rival band, Stank, gains popularity. Rodrick overworks his bandmates, causing Mackie, Drew, and Bill to quit. Desperate, Rodrick recruits Greg and others as replacements, though none have musical talent. At the competition, Loaded Diaper lip-syncs their performance but accidentally plays a flawed recording. The crowd boos, and their chances of winning are dashed. In a surprising twist, the event reunites Metalla Chihuahua, whose unexpected performance steals the show. The legendary band wins the Battle of the Bands, becoming the first to do so twice. Meanwhile, Loaded Diaper regroups. Drew finds a new job, Mackie pursues robotics, and Bill rejoins the band after being dropped by Stank. Greg reflects that while Loaded Diaper didn't achieve stardom, everything worked out in the end, and he's content to wait for the band's next adventure. In the 18th book, No Brainer, Greg Heffley begins by complaining about middle school, especially the long days and lack of effective teaching. His school recently received the lowest standardized test scores in the state, leading to the firing of Principal Mancy and the reinstatement of the old principal, Mr. Bottoms. Determined to improve the school, Mr. Bottoms makes drastic changes, cutting unessential classes and introducing the High Flyers Club to motivate students, which inadvertently encourages cheating. Budget cuts worsen the school environment, with rodents infesting classrooms and janitors replaced by a quirky cleaning robot. To raise money, Mr. Bottoms allows excessive corporate sponsorships and renames the school after an extermination company, which angers students and parents. Greg's mother, Susan, wins the PTA auction prize of Principal for the Day for him, forcing Greg to temporarily manage the chaos at school. His experience as principal is filled with bizarre incidents, including a teacher fight over a laptop and having to kiss a pig at an assembly. He is relieved when his term ends. As the school prepares for its final standardized test, Greg learns it may shut down if scores don't improve. Students are anxious, and disruptions like a bee infestation ruin the exam, sealing the school's closure. Greg is transferred to Slacksville Middle School, a poorly funded institution near a dump. Surprisingly, he thrives by introducing the popular fudge dog snack and gains attention, including from Sophie Mack, the daughter of Larry Mack Jr., the son of the school's disgraced former namesake. Greg dates Sophie, but an encounter with her father unexpectedly leads to Larry Mack Jr. donating money to reopen Greg's old school. The school reopens under a new name, but Greg faces more challenges, including the cleaning robot being appointed as the new principal. Despite the chaos, Greg reflects on the ups and downs of his unique middle school experience. In the 19th, and for now, the last book, Hot Mess, Greg Heffley recounts his family trip to Ruddy Neck Island, organized to retake a cherished family photo for his grandma's 75th birthday. Grandma, now in a retirement home, is the head of the family, known for her legendary meatballs. Greg notes the ongoing family drama and competition, especially between Susan's sisters, who often clash over petty disputes. Upon arriving at the crowded beach house, tensions rise as sleeping arrangements and personal conflicts disrupt the group's harmony. A chaotic beach day ensues, with Greg avoiding the water due to his fears and struggling with the tide sweeping away their belongings. After a frustrating shower experience, the family gathers for dinner, leading to arguments over cooking styles and favoritism in the distribution of Grandma's meatballs. Vincent, Aunt Keki's boyfriend, is excluded from receiving meatballs due to not being an official family member. The family participates in competitive board games that escalate into chaos, with Manny dominating the game and Frank ending up as the loser, forced to sing on the boardwalk. Greg escapes the family drama by exploring the island and attempting to start a unique social media account for ice cream reviews, though this backfires when he accidentally ruins Susan's phone. A dinner outing to Palazzo Pomodoro reveals a shocking twist. The restaurant's meatballs taste identical to Grandma's. Suspicion arises over who may have sold Grandma's recipe, leading to a skirmish with another family and eventual police intervention due to Greg's earlier prank with the cooler labeled human organs. The next morning, Aunt Veronica's dog Dazzle attracts fans to the house after Greg's social media post. The family decides to cut the trip short, fleeing the chaos. They attempt to surprise Grandma at her retirement home, but discover she hosted her birthday party without them to avoid family drama. While helping clean up, Greg finds an empty bag of Palazzo Pomodoro meatballs, realizing Grandma has been buying them all along. Grandma confesses, and Greg decides to keep her secret, imagining a future where he becomes the head of the family. And now we've come to the end of the story of the Wimpy Kid series. You can write in the comments which was your favorite Wimpy Kid book. Also, if you like this video, you can subscribe to my channel and punch the like button. See you in the next video. Bye!